They say the ocean takes what it wants, but that evening, it tried to take the only thing I had left, my dignity. I didn't jump into those freezing black waves to be a hero. I did it because, for the first time in 3 years, I saw someone more broken than I was. I saved a woman who could buy the world, never realizing she was the same person whose company had just signed the papers to evict me. But the waves have a funny way of leveling the playing field. The Atlantic doesn't care if you're behind on rent. It doesn't care if you're a single father whose second spine is made of pure exhaustion. For Daniel, the beach wasn't a vacation, it was the only place where the air was free and the sound of the tide drowned out the noise of collection calls. He watched his son, Noah, building castles out of sand that the world would inevitably wash away. The quiet revenge of Daniel's life was his persistence. He worked 2 jobs, wore shoes with thin soles, and made school lunches in a dark kitchen before the sun even dared to rise. He was the invisible man of the city, the kind people walk past without a second glance. Until the ocean screamed. It was Noah who saw her first, a dark, irregular shape fighting the current. The lifeguard stand was a skeletal shadow, abandoned for the day. Daniel didn't hesitate. He didn't check his wallet or his watch. He stripped his shoes and ran into the ice-cold surf, the water hitting his chest like a physical rejection. He fought the rip current, his lungs burning with the kind of fire only the desperate know. When he reached her, she was a ghost in the water, her face pale and her spirit fading. He dragged her back to the shore, his knees scraping the sand as he collapsed, gasping for the same air she was finally rediscovering. As the sirens approached, she gripped his wrist with a strength that surprised him. "You saved me," she whispered. Daniel just looked at his son and shrugged. He didn't need a reward, he just needed to survive the walk back to his car. He had no idea that the woman he just rescued was the CEO of the empire currently crushing his life. Daniel went home to a final eviction notice taped to his door. Little did he know, the woman who signed it was currently recovering in a hospital bed, clutching the memory of his face. For a week, life was a slow-motion car crash. Daniel navigated the school runs and the late-night shifts, the weight of the rescue fading into the background of his daily struggle. He was preparing to pack their lives into cardboard boxes when the knock came. He expected a process server. Instead, he found elegance. The woman from the waves, Elena, stood in his cramped hallway, looking like she belonged on a magazine cover rather than a peeling linoleum floor. Her eyes, a sharp, metallic gray, scanned the tiny apartment, the mismatched furniture, the toys in the corner, the overdue stamps on the mail. "I've been looking for you," she said, her voice steady and intentional. She offered an envelope, the standard thank you from the wealthy to the help. But Daniel's strength was a quiet, stubborn thing. He didn't take it. "I didn't do it for the money," he said, his voice flat. Elena paused. In her world, everyone had a price. The fact that this man, who clearly had nothing, refused to pay out was a slap of reality harder than the wave that nearly took her life. She didn't push. Instead, she asked for the one thing money couldn't buy, his time. They began to talk. Not about business or portfolios, but about the quiet joy of fatherhood and the crushing grief of losing a partner. Elena listened to Daniel describe a life of sacrifice, realizing that while she controlled billions, she had never known the kind of loyalty he gave to a 6-year-old boy every morning. She sat on his lumpy couch, helping Noah with his homework, a billionaire hiding in plain sight. Elena was falling for the man her company was about to make homeless. And as the legal department moved in for the kill, she had to decide, would she remain the CEO, or become the woman he thought she was? The illusion shattered on a Tuesday afternoon. Daniel had taken Noah to a science fair in the city, an expensive outing he'd saved for months to afford. Elena had insisted on joining them, blending in with a simple sweater and jeans. But you can only hide a son for so long. As they walked toward the venue, the atmosphere changed. Security guards stood taller, cameras began to flash. A man in a $3,000 suit rushed forward, ignoring Daniel entirely. "Ms. Voss, we weren't informed of your arrival. The merger meeting is in 10 minutes. Daniel froze. Voss. The name was on his eviction notice. It was on the side of the skyscraper that loomed over his neighborhood. The woman who had been washing dishes in his sink was the same Elena Vos who was systematically buying up his district to build luxury condos. "You're a billionaire," Daniel said, the words tasting like salt. The quiet revenge here wasn't an outburst, it was the way his face went cold. He realized that every moment of vulnerability she showed might have just been a curiosity to her, a sociological experiment in how the other half lived. "I didn't lie about who I am," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "I just wanted to be seen as a person." "You're not a person to people like me," Daniel replied, picking up Noah. "To us, you're just the signature on the letter that tells us we don't matter." He walked away, leaving the most powerful woman in the city standing alone in a crowd of flashing lights, feeling more powerless than she did when she was drowning. Daniel returned to find his locks being changed. Elena had two choices: let the invisible man disappear forever, or tear down her own empire to save him. Silence followed for 3 days. Daniel didn't call. He didn't ask for a handout. He spent his nights in a motel, Noah tucked into a bed that smelled like industrial cleaner, wondering how he could have been so blind. Then came the final knock. It wasn't at a rented door, but at Elena's penthouse. Daniel stood there, Noah asleep in his arms, looking not like a beggar, but like a man who had reached his limit. He wasn't there to ask for his apartment back. "My son asked for you," Daniel said, his voice raw. "And I realized something. I don't care about your money or your titles. But I care that you were there for him." He looked around at the glass walls and the marble floors, a cage made of gold. "If you can promise me that none of this will ever come before the people who actually love you, then we can talk." Elena didn't hesitate. She didn't call her lawyers. She promised she'd give it all up before she lost the man who ran into the waves for a stranger. The emotional justice came months later. The headlines didn't just announce a marriage, they announced a shift in Vos International. The evictions stopped. The low-income housing stayed. The billionaire had been saved, not just from the ocean, but from the isolation of her own success. People called Daniel the luckiest man in America. They were wrong. Elena knew the truth, she had been the one drifting, and he was the only thing solid enough to pull her back to shore. Real heroes don't wear suits, sometimes they just have the heart to stay when everyone else leaves.